Hello, this is Spartan Commander, and this is the 230th Rome Total War Brotherhood battle that I've put onto YouTube. The team today consists of RTW player Mr. A, who has bought the Rome Scipio faction. And then we have Brotherhood member Steve Longshanks, who has bought the Rome Julio faction. And I noticed for Steve there, seems to have a smallish army from what he usually brings there. Let's have a closer look. I see that a pilot shield unit is the light auxiliary. Now these are, just as it says, just light infantry, but they soak up pilers the same as any other unit. So why put an expensive urban cohort unit in front of you when you could put those? And if you notice Steve's army, I've noticed it's a little bit smaller than usual, but if you look at the upgrades he's got on his infantry, can you see he's got 7 upgrades? So that's an experienced stripe, gold shield, gold attack. That makes those units pretty tough. And you see he's got 7 upgrades on his general as well. So all in all, it's a smaller army than what Steve usually brings, but I think looking at the upgrades on that infantry, I think that's going to be a pretty tough army there. Our third teammate is Brotherhood member Killer. He calls himself Venom now, but it was a Brotherhood member Killer, and he has bought the Greek Cities faction there. I notice it's mostly Spartan units. He's got a couple of armoured hoplite units there, 4 Cretan archers, and unusually has got 2 fast-moving general bodyguard units. And I think the reason he's bought those 2 units will be shown later on in the battle. I think he's got a tactical reason for bringing those 2 fast-moving cavalry units. And the fourth teammate is myself, Spartan Commander, who has bought the Rome Julii faction there. If you notice, this is another one of my old armies that I've been playing with a little bit more regularly recently. I think it's only got 12 infantry units and 6 cavalry units. Let's say it's quite an old army, but I've found it to be still successful on the 2016 RTW battlefields, and I still play with it regularly. So there's our team there, but you wait till you see the other team. This should be a great one for you to watch. And here is the other team. We have OTD TGN Aquilius Flavius, who has bought the Rome Brutio faction there. I noticed that he's only got a small infantry army there, but if you notice the upgrades on his units there are pretty good. See, his general is fully upgraded. We've seen this before on the RTW battlefield. Makes that unit kind of a super unit really when it's fully upgraded. But I'd just like to draw your attention to his cavalry here. Can you see that his cavalry units have got 9 upgrades on? So each one of his cavalry units is fully upgraded. That makes these cavalry, that are pretty tough anyway, extremely tough cavalry, fully upgraded Brutii cavalry there. So maybe they could make the difference towards the end of the battle, because that is a pretty tough army he's got there. Then his next teammate is RTW player Deathclaw. I think that's actually Cornovi or One Eye. A lot of you may know him as Cornovi or One Eye, and he's bought the Germania faction. And just have a closer look at his army there. You can see he's got the chosen archers. They do a long range and do a lot of damage. And he's also got a couple of units of peasants there. Once again, peasants are quite useful for soaking up pilers. Their morale's not very good, but if you can keep them stood in front of more expensive units, then they will soak up the pilers. Then I'd like to draw your attention to the Germania Gothic Cavalry. But as you look at the cavalry, Gothic Cavalry, see if you can spot anything else between their ranks. Can you see anything there? If you look closely at that cavalry, can you see anything within those cavalry units? If you have a close look. Okay, if you look a little bit closer, you can see that he's put his berserker units within his cavalry. Now, this is an old tactic that used to be used years and years ago. People used to hide their berserker units in their cavalry in the hope that people may not notice that they've got berserker units. But you know, if you're used to that type of tactic from those years ago, then you always look. If you can't see the berserkers out in the open, then have a look at the Germania cavalry, and you usually find them. If you notice, those berserkers have got effective against armor maces. Their statistics are very good, and they have got a big fear factor, which really helps Germania to rout other armies there, enemy armies there. So that's a pretty good combination of troops there. And then he's got his chosen axemen. And remember, these chosen axemen have got effective against armour axes, and used properly can cut a wide swathe through heavily armoured Roman troops. So there's Germania, not that big an army, so it'll be interesting to see how well it does during the course of the battle. Their third teammate is RTW player Craterus, who has bought the Rome SPQR faction. And their fourth teammate is an RTW player called God Emperor Trump. My guess is it's a well-known RTW player who's just changed his name for this battle. As you can see, his Macedon army consists of pikes. I think he's got 3 Cretan archers, and I can only see 2 cavalry. Now, whether he's got other cavalry hidden, we'll have to see during the course of the battle. So there's the other team. As I say, it's a good team, should be a good one for you to watch. At this very early stage of the battle, I would like to draw your attention to what we looked at a little bit earlier, and that is Killer's 2 fast-moving cavalry units that he bought with his Greek city army. Now remember, I said to you that there might be a tactical reason for him to bring this light cavalry, and the tactical reason is that if you can get your cavalry near those Germania berserker units, you kind of activate them. And if an enemy unit gets close to them or touches them, it activates those berserker units. And I think Killer's bought those 2 fast-moving light cavalry in the hope that he might be able to spark those berserkers off. Because if he could get round behind the German army and touch or get close to those berserkers, he could spark them off. And then he can run that light cavalry all over the battlefield, and the berserkers would chase him wherever they go. Because once the berserkers are activated, they lock on to the nearest enemy unit. And we used to see years ago that people used to bring light cavalry units, and they used to have the berserkers running all over the battlefield, away from where the main battle was being fought. Nice tactic there by Killer. Okay, at this very early stage of the battle, you can see RTW player Mr. A is being extremely aggressive with his army in doing a right flanking action here. As you see, he's moved out to that right flank there, probably hopefully hoping to turn the SPQR player's army there. So that's why he's moved out there. As you can see, there's a lot of pilot exchanging going on there. And if you notice that Steve Longshanks has moved out close to him to support his movement there. As I say, there's lots of pilots being thrown here by both armies. And if you notice, the enemy Macedon general there has sent out some pike units, and the Germania general has sent out some men as well. If you notice that the Germania generals put those peasant unit there in open order there, ready to soak up any pilots that our Scipio teammate units tend to throw. There's a general overview of the battle as it stands at the moment. As you can see, with Mr. A doing that right flanking action there, we've all shifted a little bit over to the right there to support him. As I say, if you look at that Germania, those peasants there, you'll see that they've suffered a lot of casualties, mostly from pilers being thrown in. So as I say, if you want to bring cheap peasant units, as long as you can actually keep them stood in front of your more expensive units so they don't rout, then they'll soak up pilers the same as any other unit. So I sometimes think to myself, why have expensive units to soak up pilers when you can put cheap ones in? And that's a good example there by the Germania general. They say the morale's not very good, and they tend to run away quite a lot, but very often they'll rally, and then you can put them back in. Right, let's just pause the game for a second. If you notice here, can you see that Steve's units have gone into kind of a strange looking formation there? Now usually that happens when you actually fall out of formation. If you lose a unit and you try and use your move your formation, very often you kind of lose that formation, and it goes into these long strands, if you like. And it's not very strong, those units are not very strong in that kind of formation, so my guess is that Steve will see to that as soon as he can. Over here on the right flank, you can see that you've got Germania, plus some Macedon units, and a lot of enemy cavalry here over on our right flank. If you notice that Mr. A's got his cavalry out there, as well as Steve Longshanks. And if you notice that Killer has brought over some Greek city units here, where he split his army in two to support that right flank. And over here on our left flank here, you can see there's not a lot going on at the moment. You can see that the enemy Brutii general there is probably making moves to come around to our left flank, but we just have to see has as the battle progresses. Nice little move there by Killer, splitting his Greek city's army up, so he's got two really robust armies there that he can put in on two different places on the battlefield. So that's a nice little move there by Killer. As you saw right from the beginning, Mr. A was being aggressive there with his infantry and his army moving there to do that right flanking action, but as you can see, the enemy has countered that well now with reinforcements being brought over to this flank. You've got these long range chosen archers firing arrows into our units all the time. And if you notice, they're using fire arrows. Remember what we said in other battle videos, fire arrows not only cause casualties, but they also have a fear factor, and they lower the morale of the troops that the fire arrows hit. And as you can see, there's a heck of a lot of fire arrows going in. Do you remember I said to you that those peasant units very often run away, but then they rally and they come back? As you can see there, those units have come back. If you notice that Mr. A now is throwing pilers, and they're going into that peasant unit there. So like I say, that peasant unit soaking up pilers the same as any other unit. So if you incorporate really cheap units into your piler shield, sometimes that makes a bit of economic sense, so that leaves you more money to spend on your more elite troops. Right, can you see a berserker unit's being charged forward here? Just before he touches our troops, he will probably activate it. There you go. The berserker unit has now been activated. Can you see the red banner flashing on and off? Remember, those berserker units have got hit points, they're effective against armour, and have got a fear factor. I can remember in the early days of Rome Total War, before we had rules as such, some people used to bring 20 units of berserkers, and it was just simply point click win. That's why we restricted them to 3 in a 31k game. Okay, you can see the SBQR cavalry doing a really heavy cavalry attack there on Mr. A. Some Mr. A's units there. Mr. A's units are holding well, bearing in mind there's a berserker unit there as well, lowering their morale, and that cavalry hit really went in there. Strong cavalry hit there. So you can see Mr. A is now attacking the enemy SBQR infantry there, and have routed a couple of the units. So if you notice now, there's kind of a little hole developing in the enemy battle line at that particular point. My guess is that the enemy will try and shore up that hole, because that is quite a dangerous place to have a hole in your battle line, in like kind of the centre of their battle line. So my guess is, I say, they'll try and shore that up there. Right, if you can see the Macedon, the enemy Macedon units are moving forward. You can see that some Germania cavalry are charging in. There's Germania effective against armour axemen charging in there as well. Now Mr. A's blue Scipio units there are quite exposed. Can you see they're forward of our main team's battle line there? So they are exposed to being hit a bit there. Right, if you notice here on our right flank, you can see that Macedon units, Germania units, and enemy SBQR units are attacking that right flank. And it looks like our right flank is a little bit precarious at this time. Mr. A is doing quite well to hold against those forces there. If you notice that Steve Longshanks' Julio units and Killer B's Greek City units are holding well in the centre there. And over on our left flank, you can see that I'm moving troops in to kind of, if you like, close off that left flank and keep us all close together. You can see the enemy Brutii units there out on the left. There's a couple of units have attacked my units there, but the main enemy Brutii army is still out there quite a long way on our left flank, probably with a view to maybe getting behind us. We'll have to see as the battle progresses there. But at this stage of the battle, our team's right flank is certainly in a precarious position. And it'll be interesting to see how well we do on this right. Right, if you notice, I'm charging my cavalry in there in an attempt to try and rout some of the enemy troops there. Okay, let's just pause the game for a second. Right, if you notice at this stage, I think all of Mr. A's Scipii infantry has now been routed. So all of our teammate Mr. A's Scipii infantry, after a ferocious fight there, being attacked by Macedon, Germania, and SBQR has finally routed. So now, as Mr. A was holding our right flank, I think there's only his infantry general left and some of his cavalry. So as I say, our right flank now is basically broken, and things are not at this stage looking very good for our team. In the centre and the centre left, you can see that Steve Longshanks and Killer B are holding really well with a good combination of Julii Roman infantry and the Greek cities Spartans there. Over on our left flank, as you can see, my army is holding the left flank there, but I haven't been seriously engaged yet by that enemy Brutii army, and I see there's some Macedon units over on that left flank as well. So at this time our left flank is the quietest part on the battlefield. As I say, I think the Brutii General may try and do a wide flanking action and get in behind us possibly. But as I say, as you can see, our right flank after a ferocious battle is now broken. You notice, as I say, I've charged my cavalry in to try and rout some of the enemy troops, but I see there's a Macedon pike unit coming in behind me. The last thing I want to do is pull my cavalry back into that pike unit, as though I lose loads of my cavalry on the spikes, the pikes of those those Macedon pikemen there. Okay, now what I'm a bit worried about now is the enemy may try and roll us up from right to left here. If they move in directly to the left, to the right of our engaged units there, as I say, they could start rolling us up. Right, let's just pause again for a second. As you can see here, the enemy are closing in on our right flank. There's Macedon units moving forward, there's Germania and SBQR units. And as I say, if they come in around this way here, they could start rolling us up from right to left. As I say, Steve Longshanks and Killer B are holding the front, the right centre and the left centre there extremely well. And as I say, over on the left flank there, I'm not being fully engaged yet by the enemy Brutii units. So there's a general overview picture, overall picture of the battle there. Here's a nice tactical supporting move here by Steve Longshanks. Can you see he's bought some infantry units here to counter the threat of those Macedon units moving in round our right flank there. Nice tactical strategic move there by Steve. Right, if you notice, the Germanic cavalry has paused for a second, so I'm going to take advantage of that. I'm going to charge my cavalry into that Germanic cavalry there. I've got a feeling my teammate with his Scipii cavalry would come over as well. Yeah, nice support move there by Mr. A's cavalry. And what we'd like to do here is take out this Macedon cavalry and Germanic cavalry that are here, and then maybe go on and take out those archers that have been such a nuisance to us. Right, can you see there's some very battle damaged SBQR cavalry units charging into the fray as well. Now if we could rout all that enemy cavalry and then maybe take out those archers. Let's just pause again for a second. Let's say if we can rout all this enemy cavalry that's left and then take out those archers that have been causing us so many casualties and lowering the morale of our troops for so long. Meanwhile, over here in the right centre, you can see that, as I say, Steve Longshanks and Killer are holding extremely well against a lot of Macedon infantry, enemy SBQR infantry, and Germanic infantry there. So really well done to Steve and Killer there. Let's say over on the left flank here now, you can see that the enemy Brutii team is attacking more aggressively. There's a Berserker unit attacking me as well. If you notice that Killer B has brought some of his Spartan units over to help support me. But nice tactical move here by the Brutii General there. Moving his, rather than attacking head on with all his units, he's tactically moving units round the flank. He's engaged and kind of pinned my forward units with some of his infantry. Well, he tactically moves his infantry round behind my army. Let's say nice tactical move there by the Brutii General. But meanwhile, back over to this right flank, as I said, if we could take out this enemy cavalry and then go on to take out the archers, that would be a big plus point for us. You can see the Germanic, some of the Germanic cavalry there are attacking my infantry. I've turned some of my units to face that left flank there. And as you can see, I'm being attacked by Macedon Germanic cavalry and Brutii at the same time. Meanwhile, back over onto this right flank, we've done what we wanted to. Looks like we've routed what was left of the enemy cavalry. We are now taking out those Germanic archers that were firing loads of fire arrows into us, lowering our morale and causing casualties. But just draw your attention here to this great tactical move there by the RTW General. Just pause the game for a second. Nice little move there by Aquilius, moving his infantry in behind my engaged infantry there, using his infantry to pin my forward units and then moving his infantry units in behind mine. As I say, new players watching this nice tactical move there. Also at the front of my army, I'm being attacked by Macedon pikemen, a berserker unit and a lot of Brutii infantry. But if you notice, my teammate Killer B has brought over some Spartan units to help support me. But meanwhile, over in the centres of our battles here, the left centre and right centre, things are still looking pretty hectic. And as I say, our right flank has now kind of been a bit secured there by Steve Longshanks sending over some reinforcements there with his Julii infantry. So I say there's a general overview of the battle at the moment. If we can get our cavalry in behind some of those engaged enemy troops, that would be a good move. So you can see there that, as I say, the RTW Generals moving his infantry in behind. Remember that fully upgraded, really tough Praetorian cavalry units. It wouldn't surprise me if he got them in behind us as well.
They're attacking us.
Now those units that he's moved in behind me have probably got all their pilers, and they'll start probably throwing pilers into my units there. There you go. Loads and loads of pilers going into my units. But remember, this small Julii army of mine is an old army. It's got good upgrades. It's got that experience stripe that should, I hope, help to keep them holding there. Right, if you notice my battle damage cavalry, I'm charging into the rear of those engaged enemy Brutii troops. I'm hoping that the impact and the shock of the cavalry, there you go, will rout several of their units there, and it's just happened as I wanted there. Right now, can you see that fully upgraded Brutii cavalry now charging into my infantry? And bang, as that cavalry hits. Even the Germanic Generals cavalry unit has hit as well. But remember that each one of my infantry units have got a stripe on, so that experience stripe really helps in this situation. Okay, if you notice, I'm still charging battle damaged cavalry, my battle damaged cavalry straight into the rear of the engaged enemy troops there, trying to rout them. Let's just pause the game for a second to take stock of exactly what's happening here. As you can see, the left flank was quite quiet for a long time, and then, like we've seen in lots of other battles, all of a sudden it's kicked off. As you can see, I was heavily attacked there by enemy, but luckily I had support there by my Greek cities ally. You can see here that Steve Longshanks is doing extremely well in supporting moves there with his infantry. But you can see, remember, that the enemy army is the green Brutii and the Macedon units. That's I think the ones that are left at the moment. And our team are the red Julii, the Greek cities, and the blue Scipii. So just at a glance you can tell by the colours and the units what's actually going on. As you can see here, there's a couple of Macedon units here taking on a couple of the Greek cities units there in a kind of a little separate battle. But as I say, that Brutii cavalry, as we saw earlier, is fully upgraded. And as we go through towards the end of the battle, where our units are going to be tired, I wonder whether that fully upgraded cavalry could make the difference.
Great gods be praised! The enemy general is killed! Fear makes a home in our enemies' hearts!
As you can see, Killer there has spotted the danger with that cavalry, and he's made sure that he's chasing them off with his Greek city units. Even fully upgraded cavalry won't want to take on a Spartan unit. Okay, now can you see here the enemy Brutii cavalry charging into the back of Steve's general unit there? But do you remember we looked at Steve's general unit earlier, and he had good upgrades on that unit, and that's why it's holding so well. I think if that unit was just gold, I think he would have probably broken by now, and maybe even caused a mass rout of his army. So having good upgrades on your army does help in certain situations on the battlefield. Right, if you notice, I'm moving my infantry and my very battle damaged cavalry over to help Steve now. Remember, the enemy team that you can see that are left now are the Macedon and the green Brutii, and our team is the Greek cities, red Julii, and if there's any of the blue Scipioid troops left.
Our ally has been slain. Now we will see if his men can hold in the face of this calamity.
Let's say that fully upgraded cavalry there is incredibly tough. As we know, Praetorian cavalry is really tough anyway, but to be fully upgraded. Now, do you notice what we've talked about in other battle videos with cavalry? We usually charge in, do the damage, pull back, rally, charge in again, get the full cavalry charges. But if you notice there, he's keeping his fully upgraded cavalry fighting longer than you would normally do, because he knows it's fully upgraded and it's really tough cavalry, so he's trying to cause as many casualties as he can in the melee, if you like.
Your allies need to learn the value of
But even with fully upgraded cavalry, if you try and put them in a kind of a slogging match against infantry, then usually the infantry will probably still win. Right, if you notice, I'm charging some of my, as I said, battle damaged cavalry units through my engaged troops into the fighting enemy troops there, with a view to try and hit the general.
God be praised.
If you notice, the Brutii general has now just routed. And it looks at this stage of the battle that we've our team has managed to go on to maybe win this battle here. But looking at the small amount of battle damaged units that are left here, my guess is this battle is going to be very close. If you look at this particular part of the battlefield, you can see how intense the fighting was. And if you remember over here on this flank, this is where that little mini cavalry battle was happening there, where we really wanted to take out what was left of the enemy cavalry there, and then go on to take out their archers. So that was kind of almost like a pivotal part of the battle there, I think, because I think if we'd have lost that particular part, their cavalry would have got in behind us and probably routed our units there.
The gods be
so as you can see, there's just a few very battle damages. Even if you look at the Greek cities units, you can see how depleted their ranks are as well. Now, bearing in mind they've got 2 hit points and very good specifications, it goes to show how tough the battle was. And if you notice, there's patches on the battlefield of very intense fighting where you can see the dead, big piles of dead. Like here, for instance, you can see a lot of dead Scipioid cavalry in amongst the dead. And as you look on the battlefield there, you can see that there's one of my units with 5 men left in it. But that's because it's got a stripe left on it. It's probably just gold it would have possibly routed. Okay, the first thing I'd like to say is really well played to everybody in the game. And like we said, towards the end of the battle there, it was a close victory. Looking at the depleted enemy unit, the units that are left on the battlefield, you can see how close it was there. Just like to draw your attention to, if you notice, I got the smallest army on the battlefield there, and yet I've got the second highest kills. And newer players for RTW, just like to show you that it doesn't necessarily mean that if you have the biggest army, you're going to get the most kills. It's kind of how you use your army during the course of the battle that kind of gets you those good kills. Nice kills by Greek cities general killer there, but really good kills to the enemy team as well. As I say, it's very close victory this. So really well played to the other team as well. Let's say, I hope you enjoyed watching our battles. If you do, please subscribe to our channel. It's always nice to get new subscribers. And if you'd like to put comments about our battles, it's always interesting to read your comments too. It's Spartan Commander saying bye for now.